the NRL Fantasy creators were ever so kind to just delay the opening of the game and the app until, well, I'm back now from Melbourne. So thanks for that, guys. But we've been drip fed a little bit of information so far on player prices, and we just got some information from Talking League this morning. Again, we'll have to say allegedly at this point because we don't have the actual game out yet, but we'll have to trust these guys for now until it comes out, and then we'll go, how the hell do they have the barbecue sauce? But we know that they've obviously been on with Paulie G. I love how we call him Paulie G. That's so good. Can't just be Paulie. Have been on those NRL Fantasy videos with him, so they have that little bit of inside source from the man himself. So let's expect that news to be correct. We'll find out tomorrow night. It looks like anyway, Friday night, and then at the end of the month, we will have the app. Is all the intel that I've got so far. But let's just do a quick initial reaction on some of the prices that we have, and also potentially on the new rule that has come into play. So we'll start with the new rule, and super fresh for me. Just seen it myself, and it is going to make the game a little bit easier. It's as simple as that. But if we were to compare it to Supercoach, if things still stay the same and nothing else has changed, we have 21 players compared to 26. So just on that standpoint alone, it is a much more difficult game. So when you're looking at where they're going with it compared to where Fantasy has gone with it with this change, it does make it a little bit easier than what it was, but it's still a much harder game than what Supercoach is right now. It looks like it's going to be rounds 12-13, so the major buy and the minor buy are going to be your best 13 players from the exact starting team. So it's going to be the exact same thing as last year for those that have played it before. If you are new to this, it just means that you have to fill your exact starting 13 with every position that you need from that, obviously hooker all the way down to wing fullback. It will be the same in both round 12-13, so the major and the minor buy when there's 3 teams on the buy and people backing up from Origin, along with 15 and 16 and also 18 and 19. So they've kept it pretty simple across that whole section of time. Basically, you'll have a week in between each of those two, Origin 1 and 2, and obviously Origin 2 and 3, where you'll have the full 17, but outside of that, it'll be the 13. And it does change strategy a decent amount, and it does make it a little bit easier for those that haven't buy planned as much, and that's a strategy in itself. Less buy planning now for sure, whereas before you would need to a lot. Trades, it's going to change a few things. I will dive deeper into this in another video coming up once we have all the exact rules and all of the player prices and the salary cap and everything like that. We can talk some more strategy, but just on first reaction, it makes the game a little bit easier. I will laugh though, and I put that whole document out in the preseason about all the things that I might, I'd like to see change. And 13 in the minor buy rounds was not that cool, but they've gone about, potentially my thoughts on having a 22nd player. They've done it with this because I think the 22nd player is fine. You don't need it for every other week apart from the buy period. Whereas I think 22 would make it a little bit easier for everyone. And yeah, that's all we need. Just that little bit easier, which this 13 does. It probably is a little bit more of a jump to making it easier, but that's fine. It just brings a lot of different other strategies to get through that time. Whereas for the most part, you have to get close to the number each time. So 12 out of 13 or 13, get 16 or 17 out of 17, decent players through that time period. Whereas now you should be able to get 13 on the park each week now, in my opinion. You may, have situations where you're looping, definitely in those minor buy rounds, and that will be interesting in itself. You'll be able to do a fair bit of looping in those weeks because with 3 teams on the buy, you may be holding a couple of Origin guys. We've got Isaiah Yeo and Payne Haas right up top there with the prices on the screen. They're easily going to be held by a lot of people because of this new rule and not needing 17 in each of those minor buy weeks. So therefore, those guys, if they're on a buy, or if you have players on a buy, if they're not going to back up, you can use some looping tactics if you do have 16 available players in that week in round 13, for example, which is a minor buy and you only need 13, then you could loop around it and make some really, really fun decisions tactically during that period. And I think that's where the looping continues to get even more and more important each and every year. It's going to be important in those weeks. And you might even have 14 or 15 in a major buy this year. It might be the play. And you might be able to loop through that period as well. So very, very interesting, I think, during that time. And if you haven't learnt looping yet, type in NRL Fantasy or Fantasy Jamie looping on YouTube, and that should come up. I had it in the preseason last year. Maybe I'll try and repost it on YouTube there to go through that for you. But I think that's going to be something that becomes very, very important, and it's probably something people haven't thought of as much through that time, is getting that extra 20, 30 points each and every round is going to be absolutely pivotal for you guys to do really well through that period and now. And different situations, like I said, with holding certain guns, just because they had a pretty poor buy schedule, it probably matters a little bit less now. And getting the best scorers across that period is going to be the target. Is it going to be non-origin guys that, even though they have a couple of buys through that period, like in minor buys, then it doesn't matter as much because you can cover them in that week. But on the week that they're playing, whether it's a major or the standalone week, that you get their gun score. And that could be a little bit of the strategy that goes along with it. So yeah, plenty to go through. Once the game comes out, we'll discuss in further detail and really get into the weeds of the strategy. But as an early starter, that's where my thoughts are on it. And obviously trades become a factor as well. A lot of us would have to trade fairly heavy through that middle, but it continues to push me in the direction of sticking to my strategy that I've had for a long time. And obviously getting round one right would be good, but trading fairly heavy early on to make sure that if you do start well, especially, you're catching up very, very quickly. But if you start fairly well, to maintain the position up top is to continue to trade hard early and make good decisions. If you make good decisions trading hard, then there's no problem. So that's that. All right, let's go into some of these player prices. And just before we do get into that, we do have some thoughts from a few of our legends in the private group there around the prices and what we're seeing at the price per point, which is what they call the magic number. And it does look like it's a little bit lower this year, which actually gives us a bit more buying power, which I'll leave Scoop to discuss that when we're going to go through some videos on the remaining teams tonight, and I'll let him take the floor on that one because he's been doing plenty of work on it, which is awesome. So come along and check that one out. But the information in that private group, guys, just even now, there's a lot of speculation and everything, but just working things out like that and having that information at your fingertips and the prizes that come with it, the quality players in there. And just the banter, like it's been going on for ages and people are losing their minds and having some fun with it, which is good as well, especially in this this I wouldn't say early preseason, we'll say in this preseason now when we still don't have the game. It's having that community there, which is awesome. So come in and check that out. Make sure you do subscribe, hit the notification bell on both podcast and also on YouTube as well. Thanks for being here. But prices, we do have, as they drip fed them out, we got Isaiah up top at 865k. And if you were to look at that compared to what he would have been last year, let's just say at the back end of the year, if it was to be priced at his average, you would see him up near the 900k mark. So what you'll see across the board with guys that are priced at their average, that is a little bit lower. So as I said, I'll leave Scoop to discuss that. But we also don't have all the information on the rules. So we'll find out how that one goes in a second. But Isaiah is at 865, Payne Haas is at 825. Both guys, as I said, a little bit lower on that, but it will be relative, hopefully, to the salary cap. But then you got Terrell May. So they got the three big dog mids up top, which is pretty wild. And there will be people that try and start with all of them, and fair play to you. But Terrell May under 700k is just wild, and he'll be a captaincy option at points at the beginning of the season and potentially through the middle as well. Nathan Cleary under 900k. So we did have last year Nathan and Nico both at the $1 million mark. So seeing those two guys, obviously we haven't got the price for Nico yet. He'll be closer to the 800k mark, which is cool. But both those guys are at a big discount to what we started with them, with the price they started at last year. And some people started with both, which is pretty crazy. So $1 million in each, but it'll be less, and you'll have sort of 300 to 400 to play with if you were to start with both of them. If you start with one, then you can spend up in other positions, and that's where the mids can be fun as well. Cam Munster at 589 is pretty wild. But yeah, Cleary just ahead of Isaiah Yeo there, which is interesting because he actually averaged just a tick under him, I believe, last year, just on memory, or very, very close. So for him to get that little bit of a bump, he has a bit of an injury bump, we'll call that one, from last year at that price point. I think Payne Haas is just up a tick as well based on that. And Isaiah Yeo's bang on because he had that terrific season. But Cleary, yeah, still going to be the highest price player in the game, which again, 120k less than last year is pretty fun. But Munster at 589 is extremely cheap. And anytime through the season you see him at the under 600k mark, you pounce at that, to be fair. When he's a 50 plus, has been up towards a 60 guy, which is, Payne Haas price at near 800k. That's where people will jump on. But we've got injuries, we've got bye round 2. It'll be fun. There are a few cheap guys that are of interest here in Jack Bird, Munro, and also the other Jack, Howarth. They're 300, 450, and 400k. 3 of those guys I think could easily find their way into a lot of people's teams. I had them in the undervalued category there. And yeah, we'll speak about them once the game comes out in further detail. But yeah, 3 guys at a reasonable price that could be in a bunch of people's sides. Stefano at 600, not the worst in the world either there, with a 40 mid-40s average for him. We'll see how many of these guys you can fit into your sides in the mids. Stafford Toa I talked about as a guy that I think will improve, but does he get the spot? 250k, which is great. He got that discount based on that 9.7 in 3 games last year. Liam Henry at price at 542. Griffin Neem's in there at 451. Mark got his wish of getting Griffin Neem. Nafahu White at 415. He's going to be a fun one. And they mark Nwanga Nitawazi. I think I'm onto it now. I think I've worked it out. At 350k, they didn't bump him up too much after that one decent game, which is nice. Latrell's at 800k. He's very close to Payne Haas price, but we know that he has upside, obviously. He'll be a fun pick for sure. Tom Gilbert, they've given a pretty nice discount, which is good. Compared to that of Tino, who they bumped up at 700k, which is pretty wild that he would have to add 700k there. That's a 52, 53 average based on, you're looking at Terrell May, who averaged 50 last year and he's at 670. And you've got Tino at 700, which is just way too high in my opinion, especially with the buy in round 1. But anywho, Tom Gilbert's the one we're a little bit more excited about. The question's going to be, is he going to play 8 or 10? Is he going to be a prop this year, or is he going to go back to 13 and Plath moves around? They're the big questions we're going to have to answer with Tommy Gilbert, and that's going to come in the preseason and in those round 1 teams. Connor Watson a 663. Again, with the price points just a little bit lower this year. 50 would have been the 700k-ish mark, and now it's a 670 for Terrell May, and Connor Watson was just a tick under that at 49.7. So Connor, priced at what he averaged last year. Great news if we think he's going to start. Campbell Graham's the big one. We've got 3 guys here that are at the fun prices that when I say fun prices, we didn't know what they were going to be. Kalen Ponga's at 730, and that's in line with his 54 average, which doesn't look horrendous at 730 to be fair, and people will start with him, and fair play to him. Fair play to you for that one. He's got a solid draw to kick off. But Campbell Graham at 580, it's a little bit tough to be fair. It is more in line with where he's been able to average in previous years, but he's also been out of the game for a long time, the poor fella. So I think he's an easy watch to start the season and go from there. Lewis Dodd at 550k and Matty Nicholson at 450k. So there are question marks around Hosking and his availability, but I do think at 450k for Matty Nicholson, knowing that Hosking is likely to be the starter and should be back for round 1, him off the bench, Matty Nicholson at 450 is pretty tough. But if there's an injury in that the back rowers, he could easily be selected. And Lewis Dodd, even starting at the Bunnies, when you've got guys like Latrell who are goal kicking, who are taking so much of the attacking ball. Cody Walker takes so much of the attacking ball. I do rate Lewis Dodd, but 550k is pretty wild when he's at 330 in Supercoach, and their prices go well into the 900s. That's pretty wild as a comparison. So at 550, he'll be a no, and we'll have to look at him for a later date. He could obviously come out and do well, but that is a tremendous risk. So thanks to Josh who put this little spreadsheet together in the private group. You're a good man. And yeah, if you haven't checked it out, guys, it's all the information's in the description. So check that out. And we're getting close to game start, and which also means we're about 40 days or less from, I think less than 40 days now from game 1 in Vegas, which is super exciting. I can't wait, guys. Thanks so much for being here for this one. We'll get the 3 final teams with Scoop over the next day, I'd say. We'll probably try and get them out before the game opens, and then we'll do a game reaction, see what the rules are and everything like that once it comes out. We've had too many sneak peeks over the last bunch of days, and it's hard being in the private group chat with everyone so keen and trying not to see it like my plan was. So hopefully I'm at home when it opens and I can just get straight in and react accordingly. And then we'll go through some more strategy around the new rules and whatever's there in another video. So that's good fun, guys. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in that next video. It's going to be scoops, but then it looks like tomorrow night we're going to have the game, which would be fun. I'll be there to react to it, and we'll go from there. See you guys.